Hi, I'm Sandi Genovese and welcome to the Scrapbook Showgram. Well, you know, as 2012 is starting to come to an end, I like to create an album that has tabbed pages that allows me to be able to pull out and feature my favorites throughout the year. So if you look, I have what's kind of like a cover page, and here I just call it a year in review. And then when I open to the first section, it allows you to see the tabs. And if you look down the tabs, you can see, because if I went chronologically and started at the beginning of the year, it would be January. And so January is the winter. So I've started with the winter and I've gone through the season. So I have the winter and then I have spring. I've used punches to create summer and then fall. And then in my family, we have a lot of birthdays, and so I've got the balloon punch for birthdays. And then I've left one, this final section, I've left to be whatever special thing that might happen that year. One year you might have a child who's graduating from high school or college, and you're going to have a lot of photos, and so you might have graduation that year. And the next year it could be something completely different. So this last section is like going to be whatever personal thing is special for that year. And if I open them, you can see that this first one I've used actually a punch is what I used to go ahead and punch those snowflakes. Or die cuts would work great as well if you happen to have that. You're going to have however many pages for however many photos, or if you have page protectors, they're going to go in the next section. And then for spring, I've simply drawn flowers to indicate the spring season. And then I try to pick something that's simple to create, and we'll look at how to do these. I've used watermelon slices for the summer. And I'll go to the fall, and I've just used a rake, and then I've taken leaf die cuts and I've tried to weave a few of them into the tines of the rake, because then it really does feel sort of animated. And if I go to then the next, which instead of a season, I've got birthday, and then the last one I haven't decided yet because there's still some more left to this year. So I'm not real sure what's going to be the special thing that I'm going to have for the back. I've got all of the pages that are actually going to go behind each of the sections are just right now stacked all at the back. But it brings me to how you want to start, and you want to start with whatever you've got from the from your scrapbook. It's going to come either with pages or with page protectors. You want to use that as your guide. Here is the one from this Mrs. Grossman's, and I liked it because I liked the red cover, and it was linen, and it had the holes, which makes it easy for me to punch new holes to create these tabbed pages. So the pages in the book, this is going to be the guide for the holes, and it's going to be the guide, this one is going to be the guide for the tabs. The interior pages are going to have to be a little bit more narrow, and I'll bring this back up to really reinforce my point. If this is the tabbed page, I have a 3/4 inch edge here. Otherwise, if this was the same width, you wouldn't be able to see all these other tabs. So these pages have to come in 3/4 of an inch in order to be concealed behind and let all the tabs show on the scrapbook. So start with whatever comes in the book, and you're going to need to make your tabbed pages. Now, if you just made the tab pages longer, that's okay, as long as when the book is closed, those tab pages aren't going to peek out. So start with what comes in the book and use it as your guide in order to create them. Now, I wanted to create 6 tabs. So that meant that I have to figure out how to divide this page that came in the book. I have to figure out how to divide it into 6 sections. The way to do that easily, where you don't have to measure, because who knows the dimensions of the scrapbook the pages inside, there could be some really unusual size. What you want to do is start with the paper that's the right height, and first you're going to just fold it in half. Once you have it folded in half, then you're going to take just this half section and fold it into thirds, and just, maneuver it until it looks like it's pretty close. This is sticking over a little bit, but it's not rocket science. Basically, this is going to give me the first half, and then take the second half and do the same thing. Fold this half into thirds, so that when you open it back up, now you have sixths. So I've gone back with a dark pen and I've marked this was the halfway point, and then here were those folds that created the first third. So this is going to give me the 6 marks. And if I lay this down, you can see if I lay this down onto, here are my tabbed pages that I've cut, that we're going to look at how to create those. But if I lay these down, you'll see that yes, indeed, these marks are what I've used so that I know where to actually cut in to create each of those tabs. Let's actually stop and look at one. Here is the first tabbed page, which I did winter, and so I did blue, because I really wanted it to be like a blue sky with the white snowflakes. I'm using this first section to mark where that first tab is going to go with my pencil. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark this. And what I've done is I've just taken my ruler, I've come in 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to go ahead and draw the pencil line at a 3/4 inch. I've already gone ahead and drawn it, but I'm going to draw that pencil line so that I can see where it comes. And then at that first tab line, which was right here, is where I know where to cut in. So once you've got that, then you're simply going to just cut in at that first tab. And then I would normally grab my paper trimmer and I would cut this on the trimmer, but it would probably take me longer to slide it out and line this up than it does to just go ahead and cut this with my scissors. Do you find that when you have a paper trimmer, you almost, for anything straight, I almost never use scissors anymore, but they still do work. So at this point, you've created the first tab, and you're going to want to go back then and erase, that's why it's done in pencil, erase out that first mark. You're going to do the same thing in order to create the rest of the tabs, so that if I bring this up and hold this, you can see the second tab is going to be green paper. You can see that I've marked where I'm going to actually do the second tab, and if I pull the blue out of the way, the green one just starts at the top and it goes all the way down to the second tab. And if you look at the yellow one, it starts at the top and it goes all the way down to that third line. And each successive one, they're all done the same way, just coming in 3/4 of an inch and then lining up with the marks that I have in that first paper that I divided into 6 sections. So once you have all of those tabs created, and then you've also gone ahead and using the page from the book, you've gone ahead and you've punched the holes. Now it's time to look at decorating those tab pages. The fun really starts to begin. So in order to do that, I started first off, and I'm going to take some copy paper here, and I will just use my punch to go ahead and punch out the snowflakes. So I'm going to just punch, and I've got, I'm going to need several. I'm not going to stop and do them all. But basically, once you have all of those snowflakes punched, let me see if I can pull this out of the punch. Then what you're going to do is just take adhesive, and I like them to just look kind of scattered. I happen to have 3. So I do like to, when I fasten them down, I like some of them to go off the edge and then trim it off. And then I've even used some of these little arms of the punch to create what look like the snowflake section detail. That is, when you look at this tabbed page, you can see the first tab has a few in the tab, and then they're just kind of random. Now if you want to, you could even put winter. You could write winter on here. To me, I thought that I made it obvious with the theme that I picked, so I didn't do that. When I go to the spring section, I've used just a little flower punch for the tab section. And then let me show you what I did for these. What I did was I just hand drew a daisy, and I usually work with tracing paper because I keep a whole patterned book with sleeves, and I keep all the patterns inside because I'll reuse them for other projects. And this is very thin, and if I want to make a change, it's easy to do when it's tracing paper. I went ahead and I put this through the copy machine in order to get this what's going to be my pattern. Now to create this, I would normally just cut around this and use this as a guide in order to cut my daisies. Because the daisies are going to be white, all I really have to do is just fold it over. And if I folded it a few times, I could actually cut more than one daisy at once. I'm going to go ahead just to get all of this other stuff out of the way and show you. I'll go ahead and I'll cut out, since the pattern is going to have the lines on it, I'm not going to be able to use it unless for some reason I want to use one of the daisies that looks like it's flipped in the opposite direction, in which case I could use the pattern as one of the white daisies as well. Okay, so as I'm approaching the last little bit, because my paper was folded, it stayed together without my needing to even worry about using adhesive. I'll trim off that last little section. So now what I have is the one that I just cut, and I also have this the pattern, which if I flip it over, I could use this as well. However, I'm going to use the pattern in order to create the next detail. So what I've done is I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive on the back, and I'm going to use the yellow section. So I'm going to put the adhesive where it won't actually impinge on the section, the little tip, the center part of the daisy. But that's going to hold it in place long enough for me to go back and cut out this yellow detail. So let me go back in here and use the pattern now to cut out the second little section, just the center of the daisy. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim off, which means that I might not be able to use that pattern. So I'm going to then go ahead and I'm going to position this right on top of the daisy that I cut. Now, if you haven't seen this trick before, if you're trying to fasten something down that's little like this, what I do is I take a Post-it note and I turn it over with the sticky side facing up, and I take, and I need to figure out ahead of time, is it going to go this way? Yeah, it's going to go this way. So I'm going to flip it over so that I put adhesive here, and then the sticky part of the Post-it note is going to hold that in position, but since it's repositionable, it makes it easy to lift it up now that I've got my adhesive on there and go ahead and add this detail onto the daisy. It also adds a nice touch to go back and add a little bit of shading. So I'm going to take a marker, and I have a few different shades of yellow. I'm not sure which one is going to give me shading that is the subtlety that I want. So I'm going to use this. I can see already this is plenty dark. I don't want to go with the darker one. I'll stick with, if I put the cap on this, you can see the difference between, I'm going to go with the lighter one. And I'll go ahead and then I'll just add just a little bit of shading to this yellow section, which really starts to pop and give it a little more dimensionality. I'll bring up this finish so you can see I've created the shaded element that we just did. I've gone ahead then and I've just, on the paper trimmer, I've cut these strips out in order to create the stems. You can see that I've done the centers of the daisy in different colors and then just hand cut out of pattern paper the leaves. Now when I go to the watermelon, this just almost could not be simpler. You start with a piece of paper, and on the straight edge you're going to cut what feels like a half circle, but let yourself go a little crazy and get a little wonky with how you cut that circle, because it will look more like a watermelon slice. Then you're going to take the red, lay it down on a piece of green, and cut with the scissors a little bit of a wider edge. It'll be sitting on the red, so you can see, and cut a little bit wider, and then lay it on top of the pattern paper and go ahead and trim and cut a little wider still, and then go back with a black pen and just add in the watermelon seeds. It's a real simple thing to be able to add the watermelon. When it came to doing the rake and the leaves are just simply die cuts, and I cut them out of two colors and then sliced them in half in order to create that variegation in the leaf color. And if I bring up the pattern, you can see I did the exact same thing. I didn't even worry about cleaning it up. And if it seems like it'd be complicated, first of all, you can pick a different theme for fall. You don't have to do a rake with leaves, but notice it's really just kind of a triangle with a strip for the handle, and then these are just arcing out where I put a bend, and the bend line goes until I get somewhere in this area, and it's gone straight, and now I'm bending the other direction. If you try it, you'll be surprised. It really isn't a difficult thing. I've gone ahead and I've done the same thing. I've made a photocopy of it, and I'm going to then go ahead and attach this onto a piece of white paper, which will allow me to then cut out the rake out of white, and then I've gone back and I've used the same pattern to cut out of the chocolate brown these other details, and then woven the leaves inside. The final one that I wanted to share with you, the birthday, what I did is this was a sticker line that I created for Mrs. Grossman's. Any sticker that happens to be a design that you like, you can use this. I then put it into the photocopy machine and I enlarged it, and when it became a size that I liked, I enlarged it at 175% is what gave me this dimension, and at this size it ended up being the size I wanted. So using this, I'll bring this up so you can see, as a pattern, I've gone ahead and then cut it out of pattern paper. I've used the pattern to cut this section out separately, just like I did the tip of the daisy. I've added some adhesive already to this element that allows me to be able to go back and position this so that I can create that detail. And then I'm going to simply go back and create the little starbursts. The tip, this section here, because I use black and white, I can actually just cut this pattern out and fasten this over the top. And then I'll pull this back up so you can see. You can see that I've added the black and white section. I've just gone ahead and I've hand cut the little sections and layered a couple of layers and used a little bit of the foam adhesive to add some dimension there. And then on the same sheet, there were also, the second style of embellishment that was just enlarged as well. This detail I just added with a marking pen that was just the deeper shade of purple to make that work. So adding all of these tabbed pages, now it's just a simple question of going back in and selecting your favorite photos. That might be the hardest part, is picking which are going to be the photos you're going to add for each season. As 2012, it's starting to wind down, it's fun to create a scrapbook with tab pages that let you feature your favorite photos from each season and even those special occasions.